Если вы видеоблогер, вам пора быть на моем месте в Яндекс.Дзене. Например, вот здесь мог быть ваш рецепт. Но
Racist rhetoric against Asians and Asian Americans has become a real problem in the U.S. amid the coronavirus that originated in China. The president is promoting this kind of language. He refers to and has referred to the virus as the China virus. Has become a real problem in the U.S. amid the coronavirus that originated in China. The president is promoting this kind of language. He refers to and has referred to the virus as the China virus, as the Kung flu. And Asian Americans are reporting an increase in racist encounters. After one of my CNN colleagues, Amara Walker, experienced 3 such incidents during just one trip to New Orleans International Airport, she talked about it online, on Twitter. She wrote, quote, "I hate that I have to say this, but I belong. We Asian Americans belong. I was born and raised in the U.S. I am as American as apple pie, and I am as American as Korean barbecue. I am American. Please don't question me about that fact, ever." Amara Walker is joining us now. Amara, thank you for writing about this. I think this was so important for people to understand what a lot of Asians and Asian Americans in the U.S. have been going through. Tell us what happened to you.
And that's why I wrote about it. You know, I wanted to be a voice for so many of us Asian Americans who don't speak out when these kinds of things happen. And I do want to say, Brianna, if I had encountered just one racially charged incident yesterday, I wouldn't have probably posted about it. But it was the fact that it happened back to back to back within a span of an hour, Brianna, is what really shook me to my core. And right now, I have to admit, I'm shaking right now. I still can't believe that we went through this, that I went through this. Okay, so here's what happened. First incident, I'm walking through the airport. An older gentleman stops, he pulls down his mask, looks at me, and says ni hao, which is hello in Chinese, and then ching chong, which is a racial slur that's been used for decades. And I was stunned. I mean, this has happened to me before, sadly, but every time it happens, it shocks me. And like I've done in the past, I just kept walking. I didn't know what to say. And he walked away, and the more I thought about it, my blood was just boiling. And thankfully, I ran into him inside the terminal. He was standing right behind me when I was trying to buy souvenirs for my husband and daughter. And I turned around and I said to him in a really stern voice, I said, "Do you understand what you said to me was racist and it was racially charged. Do you understand, sir? And he kind of looked at me with a smug look, and he just said, I don't know what you're talking about, and he walked away.
Wow.
And so then I walked to the gate where my producer was sitting, and I was like, you won't believe what just happened. I'm really upset. Here's what happened. And I'm not kidding. As if on cue, literally within like 5 minutes, a young man walks up right in front of me while I'm sitting at my gate, and he's not wearing a mask. He comes right up to my face and says, hey, do you speak English? And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And the first thing, I mean, I shot back immediately because I was already angry, and I said to him, why would you assume that I don't speak English? Tell me, why would you assume I don't speak English? And he said, well, no, what language do you speak? And I said, well, obviously English, but I also speak Spanish, because I knew he was expecting that I would say Chinese or Japanese or Korean. Anyway, I mean, and then he started to mumble and speak incoherently. It sounded like he was mocking the Asian language. My producer was really disturbed by all this, and also the people who were sitting at the gate started yelling at him to get away from me, because I kept telling him, you gotta leave me alone. We're in a pandemic, you know, put on a mask.
Because he was getting close, he was not wearing a mask, and he was getting close to you.
Exactly,
right?
You know, and so he was in my personal space.
And then your producer basically got security, right? Got a police officer, and then what happened?
Yeah, he interjected, and so the officer, this is where, talk about pouring salt into a gaping wound, right? I mean, I told the officer what happened, Brianna, and my producer, who was upset, said, yeah, and you know, this guy was saying racial slurs to her. Can you believe that? The police officer stopped. He approached my producer, literally, again, almost nose to nose, and again, we're in a pandemic. And he said very angrily, that is not racist. Asking someone if they speak English, that is not racist, okay? Do you understand me? And I mean, this police officer was, I would say, 6'4", I mean, he was huge. And I was intimidated. Everyone around us was watching. My poor producer was, you know, both nervous and scared. And we said, okay, fine, it wasn't racist. And he walked away. They did track him down, but you know, I was so shaken by all of this and so disturbed that my producer kind of shooed me onto the plane and said, just you got to get away from this, you know. But I do, you know, want to say that my producer was extremely defensive of me, and also there was about 5 or 6 people who were sitting at the gate who came to my defense and were apologizing for no reason. They had nothing to apologize for, but they expressed their shock.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, thank goodness that they were there also just to kind of back you up and support you. But you write in this talking about getting made fun of as a child. But I also wonder if here in just in the sort of like, you know, recent years, but the pre-COVID era, did you ever experience anything like this? I know you travel a lot for work. Have you ever been through anything like this?
No, absolutely not. I mean, for it to happen, and look, these were all, I believe, were unrelated incidents, right? But for it to happen so quickly in succession, within about 45 minutes to an hour, that to me was what knocked me off my feet. And Brianna, I want to make it clear, it's not about me, because Asian Americans across the country deal with this on a regular basis, and we're not talking about it. And many Asian Americans don't raise their voices, including myself. I probably wouldn't have written about this if this wasn't so egregious. And this is why I'm speaking out. I'm normally a private person, but I want to be that voice. And I have to say, I've gotten so many emails from strangers and even colleagues at CNN that I've never met who are Asian or of Asian descent. And they said, thank you so much for talking about this and explaining to people why it is racially insensitive to assume that I don't speak English or anyone else that looks like me doesn't speak English. Why would you assume that? Because you're saying that this is not American, that we are foreigners. You're marginalizing us, and you're telling us we don't belong. And I hate, and I wrote in my piece, or you know, on my post, that I hate that I have to say I belong. I'm American as you. Why do I have to justify that I'm American? Why? Because of the way I look? You're judging me by my skin color?
Yeah, no, you shouldn't have to. And look, you normally tell other people's stories, so I know it's kind of a weird position for you to be in, but I also think there's so many people going through this who don't have the platform you have. And like you said, clearly they're appreciative that this is being discussed. They're going through this. You unfortunately have been through this, Amara, and I really want to thank you for coming on and talking about it and putting a face on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just mention one thing, Brianna?
Sure.
I mentioned in my post that, for the sake of the story, the first gentleman who approached me was a man of color, and I got a little bit of flack about that on social media. I mentioned it, and because there's this misconception out there that only white people are racist, or you can't be racist if you're a minority. This man, I believe, looked to be South Asian.
Okay. Amara, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You're not about to be clapping your hands at me like that. I'm telling you. I fight kids.
I don't hear it.
I don't want to hear what you're saying.
I don't hear it.
But I didn't want to hear it first.
I don't hear it.
Then why did you stay talking? Only reason I'm talking is you're talking. The only reason I'm talking is because you're talking. You want me? Yeah. I said it. I'm not. We've been going at it since this morning. I'm not gonna keep doing. Stop clapping your hands at me. And you gonna keep clapping. Stop clapping your freaking hands at me. I know you better stop clapping me. And you gonna do it again. I don't care. We've been arguing since this morning. We've been arguing for 12 hours. Why is you awake? You got school tomorrow.
This is Olbermann versus Trump, and I'm not Trump. The president is sundowning. It's a tough thing to say about someone who has long since stopped being rational, but insanity has degrees, and as the election nears, it is clear that whatever is left of Trump's mind is fracturing before our eyes. You know that he told his fascist rally in Utah that in California they make you wear a COVID mask that you cannot remove. You have to eat through it. No, that would be the story and plot of The Man in the Iron Mask. You know that he had the White House Science Office issue a press release citing as his top accomplishment of his presidency, quote, ending the COVID-19 pandemic, even though it is today as bad as any time this year and getting very much worse very fast. Also, it kind of complicates things if he were to announce a phony vaccine next Monday. What do you need a vaccine for if he already ended the pandemic? These are things insane people say and do. But it's worse than that because it's not only stupid or silly or darkly comical things that are coming out of his diseased mind. In a paroxysm of rage in Tampa Thursday afternoon, Trump warned, quote, bad things are going to happen to Miles Taylor, the newly self-revealed anonymous. And more ominously, he has spoken of Joe Biden getting shot 3 weeks into Biden's theoretical presidency. It is the kind of cold, sick, murderous, insane statement, and yet still caveated that his supplicants and enablers can deny. Because he had vaguely referenced the 25th Amendment before he said, quote, 3 weeks in, Joe's shot, Kamala, are you ready? They can claim he only meant shot as in spent. Just as they claimed 4 years ago that when he talked about what would happen to Hillary Clinton without her Secret Service protection, he didn't mean he wanted somebody to try to shoot her. Of course he did. Both times. The caveats, the vagueness, the loose ends, those are his only real skills. He says something that could result in violence or death or terrorism, but her Secret Service protection, he didn't mean he wanted somebody to try to shoot her. Of course he did. Both times. The caveats, the vagueness, the loose ends, those are his only real skills. He says something that could result in violence or death or terrorism, but carefully and intentionally leaves himself an escape hatch if it really does. The message, with or without disclaimers, is clear. 3 weeks in, Joe's shot means his last argument against Biden, or his last revenge wish against Biden, or both, is that he wants somebody to assassinate him. Just as 4 years ago, speaking of Clinton's protection, quote, take their guns away, she doesn't want guns, take them, let's see what happens to her, meant he wanted somebody to assassinate her. This should startle us. should lead us to evaluate what we heard based on the standard that Trump's own campaign has applied to such things when it seriously complained that when there was an inch square sign reading 8645 on the Michigan governor's desk during a TV interview, that by using the term 86, the governor was, quote, encouraging assassination attempts against President Trump just weeks after someone sent a ricin-laced package to the White House, even though that is not what 86 means. And if we're going to play by new rules that say it means encouraging assassination, then what Trump said about Biden was the equivalent of handing out automatic weapons to everybody who heard him say it. This should and would, for any of the previous 44 presidencies, have resulted in the instantaneous removal from office of the insane executive by his own cabinet, by his own party, by his own doctors. That doesn't happen. And we don't all stop and walk off our jobs and refuse to pay our taxes and march in the streets until it does and he is removed. And we don't do that for a variety of reasons. Instead, we always just ask the same question, what the F is wrong with this guy? Before the musings about somebody shooting Joe Biden, the deft little bit of stochastic terrorism with that nice asterisk of deniability, Trump speculated about his completed inspiration of real-life terrorism. He got up and had the gall to wonder if the right-wing terror plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan actually wasn't real. It might have been some sort of sympathy ploy or publicity stunt or who knows what he was thinking. The right-wing terror plot that Trump inspired and for which he should be charged, and for which, however painful it will be for Mitt Romney to hear this again, means, sorry Mitt, Donald Trump is by legal definition a terrorist, a stochastic terrorist. But instead of a general strike, we just sit here and all ask that same question again. What the F is wrong with this guy? And even when Trump's diseased brain puts out these sadistic fantasies of assassination, kidnapping, and execution and bloodshed, he can still find new things with which to astound us. In what kind of commonplace stupidity of projection would it be that would never occur to him to avoid because it emphasizes his own record as a cheat and a fraud? Trump, who got in void because it emphasizes his own record as a cheat and a fraud. Trump, who got into college because somebody else took his exams for him, then questioned again for the second consecutive day whether Representative Ocasio-Cortez went to college. In fact, she graduated from Boston University. Trump went to the New York Military Academy, a top local choice for the parents of usually violent or otherwise troubled kids, parents who could convince the authorities not to send the troubled child to a juvenile detention camp. Trump then went on to Fordham University and then on to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. For a very long time, he included in his resume that he had graduated top of his class at Wharton. Then the school revealed he hadn't even made the honor roll, and he stopped saying that. Meanwhile, Ocasio-Cortez graduated magna cum laude. And then, of course, there was this. This is not Photoshop. This is from Trump's rally in Lansing, Michigan. Remind you of anything? This couldn't be more evocative of Big Brother from George Orwell's 1984, unless they played the national anthem from Oceania. Somebody thought this was a good idea. Guess who? And then when we all wonder why the hell he would bring up his own fraudulent education or make himself look like Big Brother, again we ask, what the F is wrong with this guy? I wish that question was easily answered. I wish it was as simple as saying he was born impaired in some clinical way that makes it impossible for him to actually connect with other humans, so that every relationship he has is based on a bribe or a contract or a threat or a non-disclosure agreement. I wish the answer was just that he acts exactly as an alien from another planet would if he landed here and could only see the kinds of things that bind humans together. And unable to understand feelings, the alien from the other planet believed everybody who liked somebody else was being paid to do so, just like Trump acts. I wish the answer to what the F is wrong with this guy was just drug use, or dementia, or traumatic brain injury. I wish it was just horrific parenting, or never having been disciplined. I wish it was just mini-strokes, or a messiah complex, or congenital lying. I wish he was just a sadist obsessed with fantasies of violence and murder and revenge. I wish it was just that he's a psychopath, or that he's just never been loved. Or I wish that it wasn't absolutely every one of the problems I've just mentioned in one vast tinderbox of crazy into which somebody threw that one last missing piece, the lighted match that is success on television. I wish that was what the F was wrong with this guy. But of course, there's still one thing more. Ultimately, the failure is not about him. It's what's wrong with this guy. Simply, the Republican Party lets him be like this. Failure is not in the disease or his injury or his substance abuse. It's in the leaders around him. It is in the Republicans. The Republican Party has only one platform plank now, this piece of shit, Trump. Those of us opposing him have 1,000 goals: equality, justice, climate change, restoration of the democracy, survival of the human race in its fight against COVID-19. Trump and his Republican cult have only one goal: this piece of shit, Trump. We are fighting for, cornball as it sounds, truth, justice, and the American way. Trump and his Republican cult fight for only one thing: this piece of shit, Trump. We are navigating the labyrinth to get every American a vote, to give every citizen a voice, to provide every group its rights. Trump and his Republican cult fight for the rights of only one: this piece of shit, Trump. We see democracy at stake. Trump and his Republican cult see the holes in democracy that permit fascism and permit this piece of shit, Trump. What the F is wrong with him? Honestly, not as much as is wrong with the Republicans who permit him to blight the horizons of mankind, the ones who don't abuse drugs or suffer from dementia or traumatic brain injury or horrific parenting or mini-strokes or messiah complexes or congenital lying or sadistic fantasies of violence or psychopathy. They have chosen this path for 5 years. They awake each morning capable of extricating themselves from this subhuman slime. They may actually pray to whatever their concept of universal purpose might be, and somehow skip that part in their religion that says allegiance to the devil actually will send you to hell. They may do all this, and yet they act on only one goal: preserving this piece of shit, Trump. And they will atone. All right, let's do the headlines. Do them briefly. First off, thank you to everybody who asked about my COVID-19 test. Thumbs up, it's thumbs down. I'm fine. I just had an accident during physical therapy yesterday. Hey, you know the $300 million waste of COVID stimulus funds I did a story about last week? The ad campaign that was supposed to star Dennis Quaid, and it was supposed to be encouraging people about COVID-19 and how it was going away and how Trump did a great job on it. Then it turned out that the Trump flunky who was behind this, $300 million, some reports said $330 million, that guy had brain cancer, and he went on Facebook Live and said that he was seeing things and believed he was about to be murdered, and his mental health was all gone.
I'm going to talk about crossing in a scale. We got a lot of questions about how to cross in a scale both over and under easily. So I thought it was a very good, very fundamental skill that every pianist needs to do, and also gives us an opportunity to show why it's so important that the finger, hand, and forearm are connected to each other. As you can see right from the very beginning, if I start going down a B major scale and all I have is a finger technique, then my finger is going to have to move by itself over to the D sharp. Now, I'm reaching, I'm twisting, and also if I don't do any of that, then my upper arm has to make a big motion to get me there. Neither of those situations are ideal. But what we find when the finger, hand, and forearm are connected, then we have movements of all of those parts that help us do this skill with ease. We wish it could be as simple, I'm sure, going through conservatory, if somebody had told you that, well, you look a little bit tight when you do that, to just simply relax. But here we are, many years later, all of us, and if relaxing would have worked, then that would have been the solution. We want to take the case that the ways in which the body moves, lines itself up, and applies it to music will either result in something that feels easy to do or something that will feel difficult to do. So, in showing the single rotation, as before that John, Mary, and Edna showed already, it is a movement of the finger, hand, and forearm. So if I'm coming down that same B major scale, instead of pulling over my fingers over to the next place, my finger, hand, and arm rotate, turn over to the left, giving me the opportunity for the finger, hand, and arm to turn back to the right. This turn over to the left, giving me the opportunity for the finger, hand, and arm to turn back to the right. This becomes a very small motion, but you can see how that motion gets me over very efficiently. You also notice that although there's always a reaction in the upper arm, it's a limb that follows things, you don't see a sudden big motion like this to help me get over. The upper arm takes its cue from the finger, hand, and forearm, mostly the forearm. When I'm coming here and rolling over, there are adjustments. You can also see that when you teach a scale, you can't avoid teaching how the body moves. The torso can't stay in one place because you can see already here, I'm in the way. So it's a very good opportunity to show students that with each register that we play music in, we have to make an adjustment of the torso following what the finger, hand, and arm is needed to do. So as I come in front here, my body can move very little back and give me space to get here. And as I go to the bass, I'm moving to the left. The other adjustment will be just to move a little bit to the right. That really helps get the body over to where the scale is. So we want to go into a little bit more detail because there are more complicated things that happen, say, in C major and how to cross in C major, which many have thought is the easiest scale, but John Bluefield gave a lecture many years ago, is it the easiest scale? And actually, it can feel easy, but the beauty here is to find out why does it feel easy? Well, there are certain specific alignments and adjustments that are needed to make that scale feel easy. So we're going to start with a preparatory motion. So like in anything, like tennis, batting, we always have to go opposite to the direction that we're going to hit the ball. So we can't just stay here and hit the ball this way. So in this circumstance, we're turning to the right to play to the left, and that sends us back to the right. That is a very, very small, just felt movement. All of these movements, although we're demonstrating them and showing them for clarity's sake, they do become so invisible, and this is why it took so long, and it took a genius like Dorothy Taubman to uncover what's going on here. So there's a preparatory motion and a movement to here. One of the very important things for people more experienced in the work is when people do a preparatory motion, not to have the unplayed fingers lying on the keys. So everything is turning together and playing together. The first 5 notes follow our pattern of in and out designed for white keys. Why do we have to have in and out for white keys? Because if we don't curl, which Mary explains tightens the fingers, and we have a natural position, then that would mean we would be playing extended period of time in the black key area. That's not going to be a good solution. What Taubman found was it was the role of the forearm to bring us toward the fall board and out, maintaining the position of the finger where it goes up and down optimally and freely. So I'm coming out to the 4, out to the 3, into the 2, into the 1. At the thumb is where we roll over with a single rotation. We're rolling over to the right, which gives us the opportunity to roll back to the left. Now, what's very important here is that the elbow has to give a little bit to roll over. In other words, it follows, once again, the lead of the forearm. As I'm turning, it's a give that allows me to get over very easily. That means that I can then swing back to the left to complete the rotation. Now, while I was doing that, I did another set of motions. The beauty of the structure of what the Taubman work offers is that it shows you what clarity is of each component and then the combination of components. Right here, we need a combination of components. when we roll over, we would get stuck in here, which would be heavy, not ideal, or fingers would curl. But we have that other option. Since the finger is connected to the hand and the forearm, we can use the whole unit, playing unit, to help us come back on the second part of the rotation. So the second part of the rotation is the rotation that plays the key. So the first
Ехать к ням, кто такие ими, кстати, все время есть. Там, бабушки. Ну нет, нет, А, не понимаю, как это не понимаю? Ну нет, наоборот. С козами в ауле сидят. Да нет, наоборот. В обнимку сыпать. Ну-ка. Типа этого, да, да. Да нет, да, это имелось в виду, что это наоборот. Нет, наоборот, шапку постирал. Ну нет, ну да, вот это любом, что да, это как ты сразу, да наоборот. Плохой, что ли, совсем? Ну не наоборот. А, я... Так нет, ты как я говорю, я тоже не понимаю. А чё? Всё, я хороший человек, я хороший. Ничего не такие ничего не делается. Что здесь? А у меня не работает сколько? У меня не работает. Еще раз повторю. Нет, наоборот, Чё? Ну там, да. Да. Ну нет, наоборот. конечно. Грузия.
Чем дольше ты откладываешь бритье, тем больше проблем оно доставит. Кому угодно, но не тебе. Пена и гель Nivea Men сверхскольжение. Сбривает даже отросшую щетину в одно движение. Сверхскольжение в одно движение.
Fingers would curl. But we have that other option. Since the finger is connected to, I did another set of motions. The beauty of the structure of what the Taubman work offers is that it shows you what clarity is of each component and then the combination of components. Right here, we need a combination of components. When we roll over, we would get stuck in here, which would be heavy, not ideal, or fingers would curl. But we have that other option. Since the finger is connected to the hand and the forearm, we can use the whole unit, playing unit, to help us come back on the second part of the rotation. So the second part of the rotation is the rotation that plays the key. So the first part got me over, and the second part played the key. And that gives me the chance to go to the second finger and complete it on the thumb. So, one of the things that people will try to do is a confusion about when things happen. Things happen in a certain sequence. For instance, if I roll over and try to get out on the same time, really on the playing motion of the thumb, then that will also twist me. So we're putting that out motion on the playing motion. In that moment, when I turn back to the third finger, my elbow is following to a new position. If you really want to get clarity about this for yourself, just play your thumb. This is something Edna does with her students, and say, okay, my forearm is here. Play your third finger. My forearm is here. So you see, you're actually in two different positions. What's wonderful is the combination of motion, the rotation, the out motion, and the elbow coming back makes it feel extremely smooth. And then we just continue into the second finger and into the thumb to complete the ascending scale coming up. Now, I want to mention that when we're training somebody to do a scale coming up in the left, it does mirror the right hand coming down. So the right hand is going to do exactly what I talked about coming up. And logically, when I'm showing you going down in the left, and I'm showing you the left so you can see my thumb mostly. What I want to say is when you see going down, that's comparable to going up in the right hand. So once again, we're going to start with a preparatory motion, and we're not going to have all these fingers lying on the keys. So in the preparatory motion, everything moves, and I come out to the second finger. Now, if I don't have a technique that includes a finger, hand, and arm, then either my finger has to get stuck inside the black key area,
Thanks for checking out GuitarTricks.com recently. Quick question, want a free guitar? Yeah, you heard me right. Right now is the best time to join Guitar.
Racist rhetoric against Asians and Asian Americans has become a real problem in the U.S. amid the coronavirus that originated in China. The president is promoting this kind of language. He refers to and has referred to the
Hi everyone, it's great to be here with you tonight. Hi, I'm glad you all joined us. Tonight I'm working with many musical examples in which pianists and students often feel tension from preparing a hand position when beginning the piece or the section of the piece. Now, while we all want to be ready for what's coming in a piece, we don't want to get ready in a way that inhibits the freedom of our playing, a way that could create tension. So preparation, which involves stretching or extending the hand over a group of notes to be played, not simultaneously, usually creates tension. Stretching is a dual muscular pull where the finger, hand, and forearm are extending and flexing at the same time. The abductor muscles are extensors and they spread your fingers apart, and they would do that while your flexors are playing down. Now let's all try it. Let's all spread our fingers apart with our extensors and let's play down with our fingers, and I think you'll feel some tension in your hand. Now, let's try this. I'm going to stand up here, and if you can just put your hand by your side and let it be free, then pick it up and move your fingers now up and down as if to play. And you'll feel a lack of tension. You should feel very free because there's nothing in your hand right now. So that's what we're going to try and make sure we have in every example I'm going to do tonight. Now I'm going to switch my camera. I have an overhead camera. I think you'll see better with that on. So let's go to the Beethoven Pathetique Sonata. And we got a question about that. It just said they wanted to look at especially the left hand. Now many people get very tired when they play this passage, and usually that's because there's some stretching going on. You could stretch by setting up both the 5 and the 1 in a fixed way, and then your forearm isn't free to give support to each finger as it plays. You'll see with the broken octave we have what we're going to want to do single rotation here. And we have to get the 5 ready to play in the context of going back and forth to the thumb. So your elbow is somewhere in between these two fingers, the thumb and the 5. Now the 2, 3, 4, and the 5, the 2, 3, and the 4 are with the 5. They're not with the thumb. Some people you'll see playing a broken octave and their 2 is trying to be near the thumb. But let the 2, 3, and 4 go with the 5 together so your hand looks more like this. If you were going to start the piece and you put your right hand on also, you would feel very far away from your left hand. So your torso is going to adjust to the left just a bit so that you feel centered behind both hands. So that's where you're going to get ready to play the left hand here. Now when we go from finger to finger, we'll be using that single rotation that John was talking about. And as we play each finger, I'm going to feel my forearm is connected to the finger. And I'm going to turn freely left and right. Now I'm doing this very big right now because what I want you to see is I am not pulling ahead. When I have the preparatory movement for the single rotation, it makes my whole playing apparatus move to the left, and then that lifts for me to play to the right. So the single rotation keeps me from pulling ahead. I want to be fully on one side and then the other side. Okay, now as I move up the piano to play the passage, starting in measure 5 of this, you'll see that my forearm is going to move up with me. Now Edna talked about that in her example. Let's watch it. So here I am. See, it just adjusted. You can see my arm coming up and going back down. So my arm moves up with me. I don't just move up with my hand and twist. The other thing I'm doing is using all 5s here. I'm not using 4 and then going out of alignment. I'm going in here. So on the D, I go in, and then here, I'm here. Now when I come to the F and rotate to it, I'm going to move out. And I don't drop down in my wrist. I'm going to change cameras here for you for a second so you can see that.
Вася, а тебе куда?
Маршрут построен 500 километров. Кто сказал, что нельзя поменять планы? Можно. Новый Renault Captur с надежным турбодвигателем 150 лошадиных сил.
So when I move out here from the E flat, I maintain the same height in my wrist that I had. Many people fall when they come out like this. We have to keep the same height in your wrist. Here, again, don't fall, okay? I'm going to go back to the other camera. I love all this technology. Okay, so the other thing you have to think is as you're moving up, you're not reaching ahead with your thumb and your 5 is releasing. So here it's easy to get to the D because it's just a 7th. I'm in, these are 7ths. It's a 7th. Now I have a 9th. I have a little bit more preparatory motion, a little bit more to the right to get me to the left. And now I have a big leap more to the right, and it takes me down. So you can't always use the same amount of rotation and preparatory movement. The thing that's really wonderful is as you practice, your body gets used to how much you need so that it will know how much to have. Now I want to show you also how this looks when it's small, because we've seen when it's big, we're making sure that I'm not pulling ahead. But when it's small, my hand doesn't close. Or when it's fast, my hand doesn't close. The movements are small. So all the things that we talked about, you can hardly see when you play fast. But they're there and they make the piece easy for you to play. Now let's go to the next examples which are from the Schumann Kindersingen. Now I'm going to do example number 8 first instead of number 4. All right, so in number 8 at the fireside, the interesting thing is this also is full of a lot of stretching. And you can see a lot of times the right hand is playing an octave or a 7th or a 9th. So that's already a lot. And a lot of people can't reach the 9th. The left hand has a lot of jumping to do, and the hands are over each other. So as this question was asking, basically, if you play it as written, do you play it as written, or what do I do with the left and what do I do with the right? Well, I undid the thumbs when I redistributed this. So now everything is not tangled. See, this works beautifully like this instead of, okay, so everything is uncrossed, and it works really nicely like this. Now, some people, when you redistribute, would say that they were wondering if it would sound the same. And we find that the inner voices still sound the same as they would if you didn't redistribute, because here is what Schumann wrote, and we can play it this way or this way. You can voice whatever you want to voice when you do this, but you can be comfortable this way and have the freedom to be able to play and get the sound you want without being totally entangled. Now, if you look at the next example of number 4, the pleading child, what you find in that example is that the left hand has to go so far up to play the way it's written. You see what the way it's written here is, and he puts both hands up here. Okay, now that can take a while to get up here, or you move up so fast that you might make a harsher sound here than you want because you have to get there so quickly. So what I did when I redistributed it is I just put that note in the right hand. So the right hand is doing all of these things. I'm making an under shape here, which makes it easy to play and control. Now, as I was doing this, and I had already had it printed, I realized that an even easier way to do it would be to play the first interval in the right hand with 1 and 2, play the left hand, play the E with the left hand. That's even better. Do it here, you have time to get it. I'm glad to be here, and I will be mainly answering 2 questions tonight that were sent in, and these are about teaching and teaching beginners. The first question is, how do I start using the Taubman approach with beginning students? What should I cover first? And then what's next? And my second question is, how do you begin teaching children ages 4 to 6 so they, with their bendy fingers, start to develop a coordinated technique? Fingers or arms? How much stress is there on how the fingers look and how they move? Well, for any new student, I would begin with the correct seating. Now, as I show you tonight, we're going to develop the fingers and the forearm together with the hand to be a unit. I'm going to spend most of my time tonight just talking about how to do this beginning development. We're going to focus on the fingers in a way that they move with the forearm and with the hand. They don't stretch away from each other, and they don't curl, and they don't straighten when they play. They stay in their natural position. And this is possible. They don't need to do any of those things because we have a division of labor, and each body part will do what it does well. So the fingers will play down on the keys. The hand and the forearm will assist them by moving them across the keys to where they need to play and giving them weight and support to go into the key. Now, the beginning concepts that I'm talking about tonight are concepts to be used with adults. Begin with the correct seating. Now, as I show you tonight, we're going to develop the fingers and the forearm together with the hand to be a unit. I'm going to spend most of my time tonight just talking about how to do this beginning development. We're going to focus on the fingers in a way that they move with the forearm and with the hand. They don't stretch away from each other, and they don't curl, and they don't straighten when they play. They stay in their natural position. And this is possible. They don't need to do any of those things because we have a division of labor, and each body part will do what it does well. So the fingers will play down on the keys. The hand and the forearm will assist them by moving them across the keys to where they need to play and giving them weight and support to go into the key. And the forearm will assist them, and each body part will do what it does well. So the fingers will play down on the keys. The hand and the forearm will assist them by moving them across the keys to where they need to play and giving them weight and support to go into the key. Now, the beginning concepts that I'm talking about tonight are concepts to be used with adults and with children, with anyone who's beginning to learn the Taubman approach. The difference with children is you have to stick this in between how to read notes, how to read rhythms, how to do music theory. So you have a bigger job, in a sense, when you're teaching children. Now, the correct seating at the piano is going to allow the playing parts, the finger, the hand, and the forearm, to work together as a unit and to be in alignment. Now, being in alignment means that they are put together so they can move within the mid-range of motion, where motion is the easiest. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So the first thing we're going to discuss here is the seat height. Okay, when you sit someone at the piano, you want to make sure that their forearm and elbow are level with the top of the keys. The top of the white keys before they're depressed. Okay, so this is where mine is, right here. Now, if they sit too low, I'll take my seat pads out, you can see then everything is falling back towards your body, which does
or it has to curl. And we know that this is not going to be workable to play for extended period of times inside the black area. And also when the finger curls, then everything behind it is tight. So important to understand that the rotation is helping us move out the second finger. The third finger, also being a long finger, has to move out. Now, the beauty of understanding something in its completeness is that you understand that you can't do partial things correctly. It's very good that we get this correctly, but then that doesn't solve the dilemma of crossing the thumb, because as you can see, my thumb is here kind of on the crack between the B and the C, and the G is all the way over here. If I go in speed from that position to the G, I have a very sudden, fast, and not very coordinated motion, and that certainly doesn't promote playing with ease. So what else is happening? When I play out to the 2, I'm playing down in a way that I don't fall off the instrument, but I also move laterally. We have a term for this kind of lateral movement. We call it the walking hand and forearm. It's a lateral movement of the finger, hand, and arm that positions me across. And I keep going with that motion. So I'm rotating again, and I'm moving across to the third finger. Now you can see that my thumb is actually much closer to where I need to be, to the G. But that's not the whole story. There's more to this story. So we have to deal with what actually happens in the thumb. We always like to just mention that from traditional training, where fingers are told to exercise and become strong and independent, there isn't much connection of the finger to the hand and the forearm. So very often, because of that, people are trained to snap the thumb under, squeeze it under, maybe is a better word, squeeze it under. In the moment that you squeeze your thumb under, you'll feel the tension here, and you'll feel that the other fingers are also tense as a result of it. Now, what we do have is we have the ability of the thumb to move freely to approximately the third finger. So we can take advantage of that and use the rotational release of the thumb to move the thumb behind the 2. So I'm not squeezing it behind, I'm moving it behind. And then also to the 3. But these motions you can see are working together without moving across, without moving down, without rotating. Knowing what to do in the thumb won't help all that much. But if you do know all of that, to go over it, I'm going to the 2, and the thumb goes under. The falls under the second finger. There's no tension in my thumb, it's just positioned here. I'm under the second, and the thumb goes under. The falls under the second finger. There's no tension in my thumb, it's just positioned here. I'm rotating and shifting more, and my thumb is right where I need to be, and all I have to do is play forward to that thumb. When I play forward to that thumb, I'm also rotating. So the rotation is now going clockwise or to the right, and you can see where my hand is. That gives me the chance to continue to the left and complete the rest of the scale. There are a few interesting things that happen at this moment. Sometimes when people learn to rotate, it becomes a question of, how big can I make it? But the real game here is how small can you make it and have it be effective. So the rotation to the thumb should not throw everything else way off to the right here. You can release in a condition as if you just played the thumb like this. When I release, I'm in a condition to continue the rotation to the second finger, third, fourth, and fifth. The other thing that is interesting with the thumb is that when we play the third finger, we're playing what's called an out forward. Now, an out forward is achieved by also shaping. Shaping, in a nutshell, for our purposes right at this moment, is the different landing heights of the finger, hand, and arm, kind of like a staircase. You can step down to each stair, but you're at a different elevation. I can play down into the second finger, but my whole finger, hand, and arm gets a little bit higher. Now that height really helps my thumb feel like it has room underneath the hand. Then I can get a little bit higher to 3. I came out on 3, and the combination of coming out and higher, we call this an out forward, a dual function finger. I can get a little bit higher to 3. I came out on 3, and the combination of coming out and higher, we call this an out forward, a dual function finger. It has an aspect of coming out, but the momentum brings us back to the thumb. The combination of all that I talked about, the rotation, the in and out, the walking hand and arm, and the shaping, is how we cross easily. We don't cross easily by just imagining that it's relaxed and comfortable. We have to do certain things biomechanically, which allow the body to work in a way that it doesn't cause tension. So, you can see, basically you can see that there aren't consequences to the crossing, meaning there aren't big arm motions that are spastic. I can control the thumb because my thumb is connected to my hand and forearm. So when I go down, I'm going down and controlling it with the finger, hand, and arm. If that thumb had to do it by itself, it most probably would go in an isolated way, which is when a finger works by itself, and it would send the other fingers straight up in the air like this. So you can see that that wouldn't be very good, and nobody likes a scale with an accent on the thumb. So you can see how beautifully you can control the keys when you don't have that. So I hope that this will help understand the mechanics of crossing. It works actually very similarly in arpeggios with certain other adjustments, but this is the basic concepts of crossing over and crossing under. I'm going to move to the Ravel example and talk about something that Edna mentioned, which was playing softly could be the very first problem that someone would have. They might actually be coordinating very well, but if you approach the passage like it is soft, triple pianissimos is about as soft as we get, and you hold weight away from the instrument, that's not going to result in any kind of comfort. The issue that person wrote in with was that they get fatigued. And once again, the answer to fatigue is not to relax, but to discover what causes the fatigue. What causes fatigue is when we don't align ourselves well, when we don't move key to key well, when we don't have the right combinations of motions, or we don't have the combinations of motions in the right sizes, or we don't position our finger, hand, and forearm on the keyboard in the most advantageous way. And what do I mean by that? It's hard to play softly and rest down easily if you approach this passage and you play the first chord in this manner on the outside of the keys, closer to the white keys. Why? Because the minute the hand twists to either side, you create tension. You can feel it immediately. If you turn your hand to one side and go up and down, you can feel the tension. You put it in the mid-range of motion and you go up and down, and it's a completely different feeling. So the point here is that we can put ourselves inside the black key area to start this. So my thumb being on the black key is the reason why I have to be inside here. The other fingers being out is what creates the twisting. So my other fingers have to accommodate the notion of the thumb being on the black key. So having the first scale, the first chord inside allows me, first of all, to be very unified, finger, hand, and arm. I can control the descent of the key. The ingredients to playing softly are being close to the key, aiming for the point of sound, and making sure you do actually arrive on the bottom. It's not about sound and making sure you do actually being close to the key. The ingredients to playing softly are being close to the key, aiming for the point of sound, and making sure you do actually arrive on the bottom. It's not about holding up. I would say it's a much more profound sense of resting. It's like resting very intimately with the instrument. Of course, the wrist can't fall, nothing can relax, the shoulder can't fall. All of the things in terms of alignment are a prerequisite for any motions working. So we have the chord here. And we go from note to note with rotation. So in a very quick way, we go left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right. So you'll notice that I said left, left several times. When we play chords, the rotation moves toward the thumb direction and then plays straight down. So we can't play chords or intervals, octaves, rotating towards the outside of our hand because it throws us off balance. This rotation coming toward the thumb puts us in perfect balance to play it. So left, right, left, left, right, left, left. Right. Okay. So, things that can get lost. Very often, in the midst of things, certain motions can get lost. It's very easy to lose, for people more experienced with the work, the single rotation back to the chords. Right. Okay. So, things that can get lost. Very often, in the midst of things, certain motions can get lost. It's very easy to lose, for people more experienced with the work, the single rotation back. Left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right. Okay. So, things that can get lost. Very often, in the midst of things, certain motions can get lost. It's very easy to lose, for people more experienced with the work, the single rotation back to the chords. So check always that the single rotation is functioning in a very minute way to get you back. The walking hand and arm. I showed you in the scale what is more the horizontal walking hand and arm. I want to show you what we mean by the vertical walking hand and arm. The vertical walking hand and arm is an up and down movement. It's always combined with everything else, the rotation, the in and out. It should never wash anything out. But in passages where you have denser sonorities, which a chord is, followed by a single note, and some sort of alternating of those textures, we need to equalize out the experience of the finger, hand, and forearm so that we feel easy on both things. It could be that the person has the arm support for the fingers on the chord, but doesn't on the single note. Forearm so that we feel easy on both things. It could be that the person has the arm support for the fingers on the chord, but doesn't on the single note. Equalize out the experience of the finger, hand, and forearm so that we feel easy on both things. It could be that the person has the arm support for the fingers on the chord, but doesn't on the single note. So it's like falling into a hole on a certain note. You want to feel that you have a down for each note. Now, when I'm doing it, when I say there's a down for every note, there's an implied up over to the next key. This is all happening very small. So one of the things that somebody might look at is just check, just try to sense, okay, down, 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 down. This is not a foreign experience for pianists. You notice when kids play, and they play like this. Well, that's what I like to call a walking hand and arm gone wild. Hugely exaggerated, but it is natural. And you will see children will do it, and they like to do very natural things. It's a very natural motion. When combined with the rotation, it's very minimal. I want to say a few things about the walking hand and arm itself. It does equalize the experience so that the chord feels just as easy as the single note to put down in the end. It is a vertical movement of the playing unit. It doesn't exaggerate because it mixes with the rotation and naturally brings the rotation together with it. It shouldn't wash out any other components. As I go to other components, they have to function along with this. And the last thing to say about the walking hand and arm, which I've experienced in teaching, is that people get very happy with the feeling of this feels very, very solid and everything, and they actually forget that the fingers have a little bit of a movement. They have an aliveness. So the fingers have to always remain alive so that it doesn't become a heavy hand and forearm. It's so interesting because weight is a very complicated issue, but one of the things that people misunderstand about weight is that weight is always heavy. Weight is just what you need to feel easy, that the playing is easy. Let's talk about the repeated chord because it's an interesting phenomenon. When we have to repeat the exact same notes, we have to release them. That's just a fact of life. That's the reality. But we can release notes and chords in many ways. If you release the first chord by raising the wrist to get your hand off the keys, you're breaking the unity. If you release that chord by just lifting your hand, you're breaking the unity. There is what we call the rebound, where the finger, hand, and arm are sent up in a very small way, enough to be free to play the key again. That motion, the rebound, becomes so small that it gives us the chance to feel that we're basically riding the keys. When I do this, I'm releasing to the escapement. When I release to the escapement, actually it saves me time because I can put the chord down faster. If I go up in the air somewhere or become I'm not connected, then I can't control that the same way. So the rebound is very, very important. Just a few other things. We are aiming for that point of sound and following through to the key bed. Once we're at the key bed, it's a very easy feeling. It's not a heavy, hard feeling. There is a subtle tactile sense in the fingertips which is part of the rebound. It goes to the back of the forearm in a very subtle way, but the fingertips, like I said before, are alive. And this is the same mechanism of the release that works when we go to play octaves, chords, and all of that. We have, like I was talking in the scale, we have shaping, which is the different landing heights. The shaping in this for people more experienced is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So when we do a 5-note shape, the end of one shape becomes the first note of another one. So it's all done in successive 5-note shapes. So you can see the undulating of the hand, but it's not random. Each time I play, those are solid notes, and I'm doing it from the forearm and hand unified. Shaping is not a wrist motion, isolated by itself, and it's not an isolated upper arm motion. It's a motion of the finger, hand, and arm, and of course the wrist is going to go up and down because it's part of the whole mechanism. So in this, it's really successive shapes of 5 notes each. That tells us where the high point is. It's in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that happens over and over. It also helps to have the beat. And the last thing I'll mention, which is written in the score, so you see the curved lines indicate shaping. So that will tell you what the shaping is. You saw the fingering that I did, 1, 2, 4, and 5. The other bracketed marking there is grouping. And what's very interesting there is that we're breaking between the repeated chord. If this passage goes well for you, then don't try to dissect it too much. But if it doesn't, if something feels a little bit difficult at the repeated chord, it could be as simple as we finish this and we start again. So I hope that that will help understand. Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you, Mary, for that great presentation, and what I have to share tonight really picks up from all of the things that Mary just talked about. So the question that was presented to us was, somebody said, I don't understand the double rotation and I can't speed it up. How can I get this right? And I think this is a very common question that many people who experience this work or try this work have, which is how do all of those motions get minimized and go into speed? So just to provide some context, the reason for this question is based in part on the ability of the person to learn and also minimize properly a double rotation. This needs a highly qualified trained Taubman teacher to help facilitate this complex procedure. This is the goal, and good Taubman teachers may have unique ways to explain it and help accomplish this. So this is just my particular way about going about helping people do this. To understand this process, I would like to suggest the evolution of something. So if we take, for example, the evolution of ice to steam. So while remaining water, ice is first in a rock form, and then it melts and becomes liquid, and if you heat that liquid up, it turns to steam and it evaporates. This puts moisture into the atmosphere, and although we do not see the moisture, we can recognize its absence. We get dry, our eyes are irritated, etc. So this is partially true about rotation. The way it is first shown in experience takes a journey in a process that has several iterations on its evolutionary pathway to speed. It is important to understand the following information. But more importantly, it is necessary to feel and experience this process to actually have the results. We know that the rotation is the only skill that we show in a slightly larger way than any of the other skills. And we know that it must be combined with all the other skills in the right way and in the right relative sizes to be successful. This lecture is assuming that the following information has...
Do you like pedagogy? The 20 million pedagogy? Not like, perhaps. Я шучу. Нет, ничего страшного. Давай. Похватит, Лучше не их. Нет, в целом. Да не важно. Нет, получается.
Has been understood and learned and experienced.
Серьезно.
All the things Mary was
Да, там, да, что-то как-то ладно. Они все деньги получают, а ты не получаешь, понимаешь? Это не важно как. Некоторые даже частным образом говорят, ну это нет, это государственного образца идет. Ну не важно. Короче, у них деньги есть. Это очень нравится.
talking about. Proper sitting has to be achieved. The experience of the playing unit, the finger, the hand, and the forearm. This includes, as Mary was talking about, turning in one piece. The finger, hand, and arm have to be trained to move correctly in the rotational movements in both descending and ascending directions. All the things Mary was talking about. Proper sitting has to be achieved. The experience of the playing unit, the finger, the hand, and the forearm. This includes, as Mary was talking about, turning in one piece. The finger, hand, and arm have to be trained to move correctly in the rotational movements in both descending and ascending directions. Being free and connected to the back of the forearm is one of the most important points that any good Talmud teacher can make. Sometimes it's completely overlooked, but nothing will go well unless it is truly connected to the back of the arm and it's free. And free is a deliberate word, not relaxed, just free. So, given all of that, and given that the rotation has been shown, what is the process of minimizing, of taking those larger motions and finding their way into speed? So, we can start with a simple concept of the timing. So the timing of the double rotation is very important. We have a preparatory motion that sends us into single rotation into the second note. We can't continue in that direction and then subsequent notes would be off balance. So we have a new preparatory motion which brings us into the third finger. That constitutes a double rotation. So now, what can help time that motion is a chant, swing, play down. So if we begin with swing.
Серьезно, нет, я серьезно, я очень много не знаю. Значит, ну это лучшее подтверждение того, что да, ты сидишь один как идиот вообще. Ничего не можешь сделать. Не понял, всего не понял. Ну не надо, вот это вот не надо. Ну да. Потому что не квалифицирован, нет, не. Потому что ты гордый, если ты гордый. Хватит, плохой характер испортишь, да, не уважаешь. Вроде да. Вроде мама постоянно мама. Нет, он туда. Да. Охрана меня консилирует. Ну да. Нет. От нее так охраняться. Спасибо, от нее охраняться. Точно так и здесь. Не знаю, ну и что дальше? Ну так вот. Не понимаю. Вполне все знаю. Вот. Ну надо, да. И так и всякие это, а как тогда, как, ну так вот, да. Нет, я не против. Я же не все же, я не Да.
Swing, play down, and we stop, and then we is a chant. Swing, play down. So if we begin with swing, swing, play down, and we stop, and then we say swing, play down for the next one, we've accomplished a double rotation. The movement has happened in the latter part of the chant. It's connected to the movement, to the note that you're going to. Once you decide to go, it is felt as of the chant. It's connected to the movement, to the note that you're. We say swing, play down for the next one, we've accomplished a double rotation. The movement has happened in the latter part of the chant. It's connected to the movement, to the note that you're going to. Once you decide to go, it is felt as one continuous motion, even though it goes in two different directions. There's no stopping in between. So if somebody learns to rotate, and they learn it by stopping in the preparatory motion, that will stop the process from going into speed right there. So, if the timing is incorrect, if the person doesn't stay on the key long enough, then it creates a mistiming. And mistimings can create going kind of backwards into speed, meaning this way. So at this point, I want to say that if the person doesn't stay on the key long enough, then it creates a mistiming. And mistimings can create going kind of backwards into speed, meaning this way. So at this point, I want to say that the whole process of minimizing it is an important process, and one that is actually a very deep process. And I really encourage people to look into this, because very often it's not a question of just telling somebody, okay, that's the rotation, and you show it kind of large, and you just tell them, okay, make it smaller and go faster. Combine it with the other motions and go faster. It doesn't always work. If it works, I would consider the situation very lucky. So how do we begin to minimize the double rotation in the descending direction? So once I arrive on the 4, what's important here is that we begin to work with the proportion of finger to arm. In other words, how it was maybe first shown.
Это всегда реакция, понимаешь, да, то есть, реакция, она не может быть акцией, как бы, типа того. Да. Ну, типа, ну да. Ну, всегда, ну ладно, пошел нахер. Сам. Обувь, да? Обувь. Красивейшая. Мозг. Развитие его. Ну, тут как бы все равно все, да. Неуправляемый процесс, как бы, да? Да, вот так, да, вот так вот. Ну, тут аккуратнее надо. Наверное, да. Женщине тоже так. Нет, это не я.
Yap-pa-pam. Yap-pa-pa-pam. And not too soon. Yap-pa-pam.
Yeah, this is too young.
Yap-pa-pa-pam. Yap-pa-pa-pam. Yeah, this. This. Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, in my score, I'm sure it was.
I believe you. I believe you. And again. Look where is the whole 2/3 of the keyboard is unused. Only this extreme. And then you get. I'm by nature a very curious person, and I'm full of curiosity to see what it is that such talented young people, from their perspective, with their curiosity from today's world, how they come to this music and how we communicate about that. I find that for myself a very enriching experience.
Вырезать будет? Ладно, вырезайте. Ой, да ну вот. Ладно.